Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope everyone is doing well today. This is so you are thinking about being a chief of staff. For anybody logged on to the chief link, please make sure that you're logged into LinkedIn Live. Hello, my name is Lee Felton, and I am so happy to be here with you today. Just blessed that you have decided to give me just a few minutes of your time and have us share some community and hopefully share some good information exchange as well. So today we have a lot to get through, so I'm not going to do my normal rambling. Instead, we're going to just jump right in. So first, does anybody hear me? Are you even out there? You know how I like to start this. For those of you, if you're joining for the first time, my big thing is I am a conversator. And so I love to engage back and forth. And so if I am just sitting here talking to myself, you'll see I'll just ramble and I'll get on this tangent. I'll get on that tangent. I'll get on that tangent over there. So I love to engage. And the only way that the audience can engage me on this platform is through the I am window. So I just love to see that you're there. Love to see who I am speaking with and just saying hi. Where are you from? Anything like that would be great. So good morning, Kelly, Krishna, Max. Nice to see everybody there. And Candace, yes. Where's I know I typically get some people from Phoenix and from the UK, Canada. So if you're out there, just say hi. But anyway, so as you are saying hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, let's do that quick poll that I always start with. And so I did a slightly trickery thing on LinkedIn this past week. And so I posted a poll that if you're on my regular, if you're a regular follower, then you would have seen a poll that basically said, what are the most significant traits that a leader needs? And so it's not fair because I listed empathy, integrity, intellect, and kindness. Now, we all know a great leader needs all of those things, right? So it's not a fair question to say, hey, which of these traits does a leader need? But what I said was, if you had to prioritize which one of those traits for a leader do you think would come up first, would come up on top? And there was a lot of mix, mainly empathy and integrity came out as the top two, which completely makes sense to me. But here's where the trickery came in. I actually, in a separate group, posted a very, very similar poll, and I replaced the word leader with manager. So the exact same empathy, integrity, intellect, and and kindness, they were all there as well. But I just wanted to see is there a difference? Do people see a difference between a leader and a manager? And that trait that bubbles up between your leadership and you being a good manager is that number one trait. Does it change? And believe it or not, it did not. It did not. So out of I think on both polls, I got around 60 to 70 plus people answering. And for the most part, empathy and integrity were the number one traits that they feel a leader or a manager needs. So my question to you is, had I put those polls together and you would have seen both of them, would you have changed? Do you think the dynamics of what the results were would have changed? If I put the two polls together, do you think the dynamics of a leader and a manager, if you had to choose empathy, integrity, intellect, or kindness, which would you say, leader, manager, or are they the same? I'm curious if you can give me your answers right now in the I am window. That would be wonderful. And so while you are doing that, and I know I can't remember, it's a 20-second delay, a 5-second delay, a 10-second delay, there's some kind of delay. So I'll just keep going while you are taking the time to put in your answers. So what are those traits? Empathy, integrity, intellect, and kindness between leader and manager. So hi, Cynthia, Oslam, Candace Cynthia from Seattle. Nice to see you. I'm in Woodinville. So I totally am enjoying the fall weather. Okay, so today we have an interesting conversation. So please make sure Kelly, human being, wasn't one of the four. It's a poll. So yes, yes, I talk about authentic leadership. So to me, being human is being authentic. And so I wholly agree with that. But all of those things make a human: empathy, intelligence, intellect, integrity. So what in kindness? So what is the difference, or is it the same? So Jesper says it's the same. He would choose. What would you choose, Jesper? So no change. What would be your answer? So yes, we're saying that it's both the same, whether you're a leader or whether you're a manager. For me, I always actually leader, manager human beings. For me, I know in my heart that leaders are not always managers and managers are not always leaders. So to me, the roles do have two different purposes. So I always answer my own polls because I figure if I'm going to stress everybody else out to come up with these very difficult answers, that I should have to answer them as well. And you would be surprised to know. So for leadership, I said integrity, because there's lots of reasons that I said integrity. One of them is there's a lot of individuals who can be leaders who are have a form or type of neurodiversity where they don't have the typical type of empathy that that others have. For leadership, yeah, intellect would be great. It's up there. Empathy is up there. Kindness is up there. But integrity, to me, staying true to who you are, staying true to yourself, staying true to what you're saying. How can others follow you if they don't really believe that you believe what you're saying? So to me, integrity was for the leader. And this is the least popular answer out of all of them. For manager, I said intellect. To me, again, one of the things that's important is everybody has their own perspective and opinion. This is just mine. So there is no, and there never has been a right or wrong answer. There is no right or wrong answer. But I said intellect for a manager, which like literally on both of the polls may have gotten like one vote. So it was the least popular, but I said intellect because for a manager, to me, a manager is supposed to give direction, guidance, and is supposed to give you where you're supposed to go. It's like, I don't have to like you. And I've had lots of managers that I didn't like and they didn't like me. But to have that level of intelligence where you know what you're doing and I can respect you for that, and I'm going in the right direction because you're giving me that right set of information, you're stepping in when you need to me, I mean, all of them are important, but to me, for manager, I personally would prefer a manager that had more intellect. So, okay. So while you are all thinking about those 2 cents of information, I would love to introduce my guest today, Taylor Bowles. I recently met Taylor at an event that we were both supporting from different angles, and was just completely struck by her. And the most amazing thing is, I talk about being a chief of staff, and I talk about being an executive level chief of staff all the time. And I always get the question, especially from a lot of executive assistants, well, my journey is to the chief of staff role. And so how do I get there? My question to Taylor was, if you are already a chief of staff, but you have the title of executive assistant, but what you're actually doing, if you talk about the role and the responsibilities that you have are actually that of a chief of staff, why are you, because executive assistant to me, like I said, is a completely different role. Why are you going by the title of executive assistant? And with that, I would love to bring onto the stage Taylor Bowles. Taylor, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. And so before we jump into our conversation, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about you?
Yeah, well, as she said, my name's Taylor. I have been a chief of staff since the day I met Lee. um, and truly, I've been part of this organization called the Game Changers Inc., where we coach, train, and inspire leaders all over the world in unleashing their potential in life and work. I've been a part of this organization for about 3 years. I graduated from the University of Washington, go Huskies, in 2020. So right after I graduated, I went right into my job now, and have just been on the rise ever since. So I'm really honored for what I do, who I do it with, and what I'm doing now.
And we're so happy to have you. And so it's interesting. So this particular podcast is about the role of an executive level chief of staff. And so I talk all the time about what does it mean to be an executive level chief of staff. In fact, I wrote a book, Unlocking Your Inner Chief of Staff, which it's an executive coloring book, just to tell you, just to give you some insights on who you're talking to right now, right? So it's an executive coloring book, but it really is about the job of a chief of staff and unwrapping and unraveling what is that role. Yeah. And so I think it would be helpful, as you said, it's like I've been a chief of staff since I met Lee, but I think it would be helpful regardless of titles. Let's talk about your core responsibilities. So this is what I want people to understand. And so whether you're an EA, whether you're an executive, and this is for the audience, whether you're an executive and you're trying to debate, should I transition my EA to chief of staff? I always say that they're completely separate roles. Most people would have an EA and a chief of staff. If you can't have both, then I always say have an EA. But most people would have, I would say there are two different roles, so you would have both. But just forget titles for a moment and just tell us, what are your actual core responsibilities?
So my number one core responsibility, is social media. So I run that for our business. Number two is our travel for our president, making sure he's to and from, he's exactly where he needs to be, taking the right vehicles he needs to take. Content creation. So for our clients, I help build that with our project manager. So that's a whole nother role for her. So I come alongside her, making sure the content is in alignment. And we do messaging creation. That's also what I do. And then lastly, all of the in-betweens that helps the rest of the company run. So even if we're not working with the client at the time, everything else that makes it run. So finances, invoices, we make sure projects are still running. We have the right people in the place to manage those ahead of projects or strategic planning. So it's all of the nuts and bolts that keeps the ship together. All of that is what I'm also part of and in charge of.
So I'm smiling because there's one thing that you mentioned that we didn't talk about the day that we met, but this is exactly what we discussed. You really, everybody coming to you is like, what's going on? How do we make sure that things are in the place that they need to, that you're orchestrating and making sure the business is successful?
Yes.
As I've described it many, many, many times, that is the role of the chief of staff. There was one thing you said that piqued my eye over here, because it actually is the role of an executive assistant, and that's arranging travel, doing the logistics and all of that for travel. But we have to be fair. In smaller organizations, often we wear more than one hat, which is completely fine. So I typically, talk about the travel. If your job description says that you are organizing travel and schedule, and doing all of the calendaring, then that is more of the executive assistants. But if you're making sure, it's like you are coordinating and making sure that where is that person supposed to be? Does it conflict? Meaning not just from a calendar perspective, but from a messaging perspective, from a business perspective, from how you're running the full end-to-end organization. Are there, operational conflicts? Then from that perspective, I've always, said that delves more into the chief of staff realm. And so when you hear the term chief of staff, was that something that you had heard previously?
I've heard it of other organizations. And again, give context, we're a really small organization. We are a team of 5, and we just added our 5th member this year. So yeah, so we all wear multiple hats, but especially me. So when you brought up chief of staff, I was like, ooh, I was like that is definitely more of a bigger corporation title that I've heard of. I've never once related it to what I would do or what I actually do. More so, I came in as an executive assistant, more so to catch all of the other things that were in the gaps that our other members couldn't devote time to. And so I was like, you know what, I'm running this. This feels great. I think this is a proper title for right now. But the next one I was going to go up to at one point would be like partner or apprentice, because of just the natural progression of where our organization is that would come in time. So not at any point did I ever think chief of staff was going to be a title or a hat that I wear. But ever since I've been wearing it, it sure fits really well. Like it covers everything. And oddly enough, not oddly, but amazingly, it gives so much confidence in what I do. Sometimes when you hear executive assistant, it's more so, you're just taking care of the personal needs of, of the president or a CEO, making sure they're, everything is good for them. It's like, yes, that ultimately just all boils down to that. If he's happy, then we're all happy. But there's so much more that I do day in and day out. So it's like, there has to be like, executive assistant in a way is kind of like, oh, that's cute. And it's like, oh, it's actually a lot harder than it looks or it sounds. And chief of staff has recently just brought the bar up to exactly what it
And don't get me wrong, Taylor, my suggestion to you to transition from executive assistant to chief of staff, I have worked with more executive assistants than I can count on two hands for sure. And I never think of it as, this cute role or this subordinate role, or I think of executive assistants as leaders. And so even when you got your start and you had that huge amount of responsibility on your shoulders, even though that's part of the problem, it's others' perceptions. Too many people don't understand the significance of the executive assistant, of the leader capabilities of the executive assistant. And so they think exactly that. But just so you know, my conversation with you wasn't about saying that, oh, you're not just an executive assistant. No. It was saying the actual role you do in taking care of the business and making sure, of course, your president has to be successful, but your president has to be successful. And that person is, needs help making sure that everything across their business is successful. That is a chief of staff. And so I'm glad that you found some warmth in the title.
Oh, without question. And amazingly, because I was our president CEO was there when me and you were having the conversation, and we left, and he's like, that is the most accurate title for you. Because literally that's what you do, and that's what you'll continue to do as more comes in. I need you hands-on on everything. And it's like, well, hey, let me get a hat. Let me put the letters on there. Let's get it going. But I love it. It fits so well. And if anything, it gives so much more purpose in the day. Like when I show up for work, I'm like, hey, I'm in charge. I'm not in charge. I am
You're in charge.
Responsible. I carry the proper responsibility to ensure all of us can do our jobs properly, and I take great pride in that.
And that's one of the things that I say. I mean, when you say I'm in charge, you are in charge, and there's nothing wrong with those words. It's not ego. I always say, being a chief of staff, you actually have to leave your ego at the door. Yeah, it's one of those roles that you go from determining and helping to lay out a strategy and making sure that everybody across the organization is aligned and understands that strategy, to making copies. Well, we don't really use paper that much anymore, but you know what I'm saying? To make it used to be back in the day. It used to be, I would roll up my sleeves and make copies for a meeting if I had to, if that's what needed to get done. And so it really is one of those positions where you have to act at any, situation, you have to be willing to roll up your sleeves and act. And so I do want to say that I was very impressed with you. I was very impressed with the work that your organization does. And I thought it would be a good conversation for us to have here for this audience, because as I said, so many executive assistants are trying to say, oh, in order for me to get that respect that I need, then I need to, I need to get out of the executive assistant role and move into a chief of staff role. But again, being two separate positions. So how do you handle calendaring? I know you have a smaller organization. So how do you handle calendaring? Do you do the calendaring as well?
I do the calendaring when it comes to first travel and when it comes to more so personal meetings. So our project manager, which is now, because I changed my title, we now changed hers, which is Chief Operating Officer. So she, and also just to point out, it's funny that all of the titles changed. Like, well, wasn't that supposed to be the case? Because we're so small and we function like this for years, it's just never been a thing that we've touched on. But she really calendars our executive coaching meetings, the pre-booking meetings. So we have our two other members who put those on the calendar. My job for calendaring is making sure that there's no conflicting between the two. And
that you prioritize, you help to prioritize what's more important, which one should we go with?
Absolutely. And it's more so because I'm closer to our CEO and president for us actual proximity. So we review the calendar every week and every day to make sure, like, hey, is this the one that you want here? If not, we got to act on it now. This is what the content of it is going to be about. So it's verifying what's put in the calendar and him deciding whether or not he wants to keep it or not. So I'm kind of the filter that all that goes through. Most times, not early on, it was really difficult because I also was really young when I came in. So I didn't know the context as to what all these meetings were. It was just like, hey, which one should we do here or whatever? It's like, I don't really know what the gravity of these are. So now, after a couple of years, it's way smoother. Now they're way more repetitive. But calendaring, yes, it actually, that's the majority of what I focus on throughout the day as things come in and come out. And oftentimes you have to decline a lot, but yeah.
Well, and and if your executive is like, I think 100% of the executives that I work with, they want to say yes to everything. They want to say yes to everything. And the rule that I make when I'm working with an executive is that even as much as they want to, they're not allowed in a conversation, in a meeting, they're not allowed. I mean, like literally, when we talk about the role of an executive chief of staff, you should be giving your executive direction, but they're literally not allowed to say, yes, oh, definitely, I'm going to do that. They're not allowed to do that. What they instead have been coached to say is, that sounds like an amazing opportunity for us to get together. I'm going to put you in touch with Lee, or if the EA, so the EA will get the request, but then, I typically have daily conversations with my EAs, with my EA partners. And so we'll get it worked out, but making sure that they are not just, because then nobody can come to me behind the scenes and say, but they promised that they were going to be there. It's like, they better not have.
Exactly. And that's only happened a very few, like less than a handful of times, where, again, because we're so small and because the company runs only through one person, there's only so much he can do and be, and so when he wants to say yes to everything, as of like a year and a half ago or so, me and our operating officer were like, you know what, let us have the meeting first, and then we will decide whether or not you should be a part of it. Because some things are more so introductory, where he's so high level that it's like, you might not want to get in the nitty gritty yet, because we're not for sure if that's not to be cold, but if it's worth your time or investment right now. And if it is, then we'll bring it to you. If not, there's way more like vital things that need your attention. And that has been
It's
game
not being
changer.
told. It's about doing your job. It's about
Yes.
prioritizing. You don't have infinite amount of time. You don't have infinite amount of time.
No.
So we only have a few more minutes left. I would love to open the floor. If there are questions that you may have for Taylor, and as you know, this is also our Q&A time. If there's questions that you have in general about the chief of staff role, would love to hear from you. As we say, I get a lot of people connecting with me after the podcast, or even in between them, wanting to to do mentorship. And unfortunately, now that I am full-time consulting, I don't have as much time for the mentorship, but I have taken these Fridays every other week to hopefully offer our group mentoring around the role and around how we can make sure to drive more awareness to what an executive chief of staff may be. So Taylor, so it sounds like it's going well in the last month or so of your new position. Any questions? Because we didn't actually dive a lot into the role of the chief of staff. Any questions that you have about the chief of staff role, or things that relate to how to ensure you're more successful?
Yeah, truly. It's funny. At that same night, my title changed. I went to Google and to really go in depth, like, what does this mean? And amazing, like exactly what you said. Everything that I'm doing is the role of executive chief of staff. I think for me, it's more so asking, like, what is the best practice to organize, like, myself in the middle of organizing everyone else. I think right now that's the hardest thing to juggle, prioritizing my own time, yet not doing it so much that I kind of lose sight of the big picture.
It's a never-ending question, and we've had it on here many times. Is the chief of staff role a 365 24/7 job? And I can't say that it necessarily is, but it definitely doesn't work. If you are looking for an 8 to 5, 9 to 5, 8 to 4, then the chief of staff role is not for you, because it doesn't follow just typical patterns of set hours. But you have to find your balance. And I talk about the balance of 3. And I always, when I talk about finding balance, there's this balance of 3. And so it is what you're doing for your work. It is what you're doing for your personal environment, whether that's if you're, have a partner, whether that's friends, or whether that's other activities or whatever that you do around your person. If you have children, your personal environment. And then the third is around yourself. And so at any point in time, people always say, oh, balance is about being able to balance between those 3. Balance isn't saying that I need 33% here, 33% here, and 33% here. Balance is saying that I may have to shift at any given time. I may need 95%, 100% wholly dedicated to work, or I might get to a point where I need 100% wholly dedicated to me.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that it's the best practice, but one of the things that you can do is consciously think about those 3 circles and where you need to have balance at that particular point in time. You have a big conference coming up, a big event coming up. You have to, give that 2 weeks or whatever it is, with more of a significant focus on work. Once you have that downtime, how do you prioritize yourself? Yeah, you could get going and immediately dive into the next thing, or you can say, I have to prioritize me as well. Otherwise, I won't be able to do much in the other 2 circles.
Absolutely. Man, that was so helpful in itself, because those are the exact 3 sectors I'm in right now. So that helps so much. Thank you.
No,
I'm definitely
no
in the work is at least 80% right now. 80 and 20% self. Personal, not so much right now.
And it's also about stages in life. And so I can honestly say in my early and mid-career stages, I was a amazing workaholic. I am to the point now personally where I am at this stage in life, where I can do so much more because I've done it so many times and lots of things come natural. I can do so much more now So, it's
Yeah.
also the stages in life. As I tell my daughter, you have to pay your dues.
Yes. Yes.
So any final words of encouragement for our audience before we let everybody go?
Man, I would encourage take the leap. Whatever position or role you want to be in, go ask for it. Ask for it, and if the answer is no, keep knocking, and at some point the door will open. Just take the risk. Take the risk. Yeah.
I sincerely appreciate you, Taylor.
Oh, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Okay. Well, take care, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your week. Okay.
Yes.
Until next
Bye.
time. Bye.